Over the last 5 years, Nintendo has sold us many variations of the Switch, with this being the fourth actual design, with the dock finally getting its second variation. Still, the Switch is an awesome console, and the OLED model makes it even better. To start, the video and console will not move you from hating the Switch if you do, but if you love it, I'll tell you why the $50 price difference makes this an amazing purchase, of course, if you can actually buy one. This is Matt from Real World Review, and today we're going to be talking about the Switch I've been waiting for, the Nintendo Switch OLED. You know what to do with the socials above, so let's jump into it. Now it's obvious that the Switch is not trying to be a PS5 or an Xbox Series X, but instead it's in its own class of portables, the Switch actually being considered a hybrid. The only competitors out there are literally computers that are portable. That's pretty much it. But to review this new take on a classic, we will break it down and go over a few different categories. This is the biggest and most important upgrade. Luckily, Nintendo has found a panel that's become better, but isn't the best. It's still flat, and now it's 7 inches and actually has a laminated screen, not to mention a glass one. A screen being laminated means that the images will look a little bit clearer and there will be a lot less glare from the screen. Then the mix of the OLED and lamination will get rid of almost all the gray looking images you'll see when viewing dark content. Now the screen is glass, but the touchable area is still plastic. Instead of using a tempered glass, they use something similar to like old Sony phones, so when the screen does shatter, the little plastic cover will hold in all of the glass. It's kind of annoying to see, but this product is also made for kids that will be throwing this around and will most likely break it. So luckily no glass shards will be falling off. So that's kind of a plus. Personally, I do recommend a tempered glass screen protector, courtesy of today's video sponsor. No, not them. Me. My channel has no sponsors, so I rely on ad revenue and affiliate links to pay for all the things that you see. So if you want to help keep the channel going, use the link below, and any of the purchases that you make will help support the channel. I do get a small percentage from Amazon when you do make a purchase. Or you can go the free way, by just watching my videos. That helps too. Anyways, back to the review. My only issue with the screen is that the OLED panel is good, but not the best. It's very similar to the normal LCD panel, so images look pretty nice, but only as good as a 7-inch 720p OLED display can give you. The screen still runs at a max of 60 frames per second, so there's no improvements there. Still, gameplay is spectacular on this one and very immersive. Of course, if you normally play a Switch in docked mode, this section literally does not matter. But personally, I use my Switch either in my room or at work, so outdoor performance never really matters to me. Not to mention, I do actually get carsick when I'm looking down at screens. Still, the screen is very bright and well-rounded thanks to that laminated screen, meaning that outdoor visibility is a lot better compared to the LCD Switch. And the OLED does help as well. Even though it is an OLED display, the brightness is still pretty similar to an LCD Switch, and thanks to that laminated screen, outdoor visibility is actually a little bit better than the LCD Switch. I'm also happy that the bezels look so much nicer and the light sensor and the speakers aren't invading the screen anymore. As for the shape, pretty similar. Sure, the back has a massively different and actually useful metal kickstand, but the overall design of the Switch hasn't really changed too much, but it does add some quality of life upgrades. The power button is bigger and still sunken in, and it still kind of feels like it broke a while ago. The air vents are actually smaller, and the light sensor is now at the top of the device, instead of being awkwardly placed under the screen. I love this because I never use auto brightness, so this sensor being in the screen area was kind of pointless to me. The game card holder is a little bit different, and I actually found it a little bit difficult to open sometimes. I literally was scratching the console just to try and take out the cartridge. But like I said about the kickstand, it actually has a very good hinge where it just stops wherever you want, not at set levels. That's pretty cool. The SD card has moved a little bit, with some people complaining about it, but I never really had issues with it. As for the air vents on the bottom, they're now slightly thinner, but dramatically longer, and accompanied by 2 rubber stoppers, which is strange because they're used to keep the Switch stable, but the stand has nothing on it to make it stable. Regardless, it works out well and is 1,000 times better than the afterthought of a kickstand. I mean, even the Mario kickstand wasn't even a different color. Nintendo really hated this kickstand. The interesting thing is that the shiny border around the screen is actually metal now, just like the Joy-Con rail. I'm not sure why they went with this change, because shiny metal just means that it's going to scratch easy, while the back stays plastic, just like the Joy-Cons themselves. Then when you move to the inside, not much has changed. It's the same battery, same processor, same everything really. One interesting design choice is the move towards 32 gigabytes of removable eMMC storage to a soldered 64 gigabytes of storage. After using it for a couple days, I started to wonder what that actually meant for game load times in basic usage. And also I didn't know if it was eMMC or if it was UFS storage. Overall, it turned out to be pretty much the same, and it's definitely eMMC storage. I ran single tests, and here are some numbers that I got, ultimately telling me that the best way to run a game is through a fast SD card, but at that rate you'll be saving literally seconds in load times, not really much. When it comes to internal storage, it seems like it's pretty much the same thing, just double the storage. As for the speakers, they sound very similar, but slightly fuller thanks to that closed speaker system. Something that should have happened years ago, seeing that companies like Apple have been closing their speaker setup in phones since 2007. One interesting choice is the white option, something that you can't just buy, just like the spotted wrist straps. There are little things like that, all to make the normal OLED model feel even more special. It should be noted that the Switch is pretty much the same height and thickness, but it's a little bit wider, so some accessories might not fit on this one. As for the vibrations, they come from the controllers, so it feels literally the same as before, and if there are any differences, I can't really notice them. The fitment of the Joy-Cons are a little bit more sturdy, however, I'm not really sure how long that will last. And then we come to the price, and honestly, I feel like people miss the point on this one. We have the Switch Lite and Switch LCD at $200 and $300 respectively, and the OLED model is $350. Immediately, the OLED panel has a lot of worth, seeing that an almost 5-year-old LCD is being used on the regular Switch, while the OLED model is assumed to be new, meaning more money for research and development needs to be paid. So even on this alone, $50 moves this assumed $20 part to a $70 part, which is still fairly reasonable for an OLED model. Then we're moving from 32 gigabytes to 64 gigabytes, which is debatable on how you see the worth because it literally cost me $4 more to purchase. But you can also pay $30 for a 256 gigabyte SD card, which would probably cost about $150 to $200 5 years ago. So it seems like they could have put way more than just 64 gigabytes in this. The new dock has a LAN port and trades that USB-A port that was 3.0 or higher, so it's debatable if it adds some worth, but realistically, I don't think there's much value difference there. There really aren't any accessories that require USB 3.0 other than possibly just the LAN port, so maybe they just saved you a little bit of money on an adapter. But now we get a usable kickstand, which honestly is worth the $50 upgrade in itself. This type of stand is the best, and I'm honestly glad that Nintendo actually listened to their customers and over-engineered the stand to work so much better. But at $50 more, I would absolutely say buy the OLED model. These upgrades are way worth it at $350 over that $300 price tag. But if you have a normal Switch, this is interesting. You can sell your current one for maybe $200 to $300 depending on how you look at it, but unless you play in portable mode most of the time, the upgrade doesn't really make sense if you have a perfectly good working Switch. Now if you're experiencing some drifting, terrible battery life, or hate using the Switch Lite, then this would be an easy buy, of course, if you can find one. But the whole point of watching a review is to see if the purchase is worth it, and honestly, in this time space, I'm not sure. Now, we take something like the Wii and the Wii U and realize that the release was 6 years apart, and the Wii U shares a lot of ideas with the Switch. So if we take this as a baseline, this means that we're coming up on a newer device in the next couple of years, leaving us questioning whether or not it's worth buying something that is ultimately 5 years old, but more efficient. The bad things are that we're talking about eMMC storage, think Samsung Note 4, a 720p OLED, think Samsung Galaxy S3, and a 16 watt-hour battery. Okay, there's no old comparison there other than the original Switch because the battery size literally has not changed. We didn't get anything other than hardware changes, and honestly in the docked area, most people are going to see that this is only a new color for the Joy-Cons. They're not really going to care about the extra storage because they already have an SD card, or they're not going to care about the LAN port because Wi-Fi is really good nowadays. You can't game at 4K, only 1080p while docked, or 720p in handheld mode. 64 gigabytes is barely any memory, fitting 3 or 4 large titles, not to mention kinda slow at loading them, thanks to that eMMC storage. The battery life is the same, goodish at 4 to 6 hours of gaming, which drops down to 2 to 4 hours after a year or so. The charging port is at the bottom, still, because of the dock. Nintendo servers are half-baked in general, as I've seen people talk about how the LAN port is really for consistent connectivity, because if you have 1 gigabit internet, it means nothing because the servers are not even a quarter of that speed. It is still fairly large and heavy, not to mention just as fragile, and will cost even more to fix now. All of this stuff, but that's what we expect from Nintendo because their future is and always has been filled with ambitious goals that are met with average results. The Nintendo Switch itself is not on the same level as the PS5 or even the PS4, but it's still loved by millions of people, myself included, simply for the fact that it's the best portable you can buy. That's where Nintendo will stay, and honestly, I don't think that's a bad thing. And that's my review of the Nintendo Switch OLED, the upgrade to the best average gaming console. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed using the Switch OLED. As always, feel free to message me on the socials listed above, and I will see you all next week. Thanks for watching.